Hello there. This is MD. Here with you on SaskiYano. Here we go again. We are in a new After Effects tutorial. In this tutorial, I'm going to pick up right where I left off in the last tutorial and show you how to convert this two-dimensional text into native 3D text without using any third-party plugins. In order to do that, we need to change a few settings. Let's bring up the composition settings. And you can do that by hitting Ctrl K on the keyboard or coming up to the menu, Composition Settings. So far we've explored at the basic tab here. In the comp settings, things like resolution, frame rate, start time code, duration, background color. We need to do is jump over here to the 3D renderer. Now by default, you probably have been working with the classic 3D renderer, which is great. It's the default renderer, does lots of stuff. But what it doesn't do is real 3D geometry. But if we click, we have some options here. We have Cinema 4D. Let's check in the Cinema 4D option. And when you do, you see we have two lists that pop up. We have something that says, these are the features that are enabled. So, with the 3D renderer set to Cinema 4D, we have enabled extruded and beveled text and shapes, reflections, curved, footage layers, material, overrides, on text and shape, bevels, and sides, environment layers, in reflections only. But there are some things that are disabled. Blending modes, track mats, layer styles, masks, and effects, on continuously rasterized layers, text, and shape layers, class 3D pre-compositions, and some other stuff. The point here is that although this enables us to extrude and bevel text in other shapes and get cool looking reflections, this disables some things as well. In this scene, it's gonna work fine. So I'm just going to click OK. Once you have changed the 3D renderer, if you drill down in the text layer, then we have a property called Geometry Options. And that is enabled. So with our geometry options, we can now extrude the text. You can see what's happening there. It looks pretty terrible because we don't have any lights. And so everything is just like 100% bright. Even if we change the color of this text, it's still a pretty nasty. So, to make this look a little bit better, let's add a few lights to the scene. Right click here. Go to New, Light. I am going to grab a point light. And I'm gonna pick the color of this light over here. Or something in that neighborhood. And then press OK. And I am gonna press AA, bring up the lights options. And I know that the radius and the fall off are pretty low. So I am gonna set both to 1200 for now. And now we need to do is position the light so that it's in front of the text, because it's too far away to be doing any good. Because by default it's probably not gonna be in the right location. One way that may help you is to take a look at some of these different views here. Right now, it's at the active camera. So we're actually looking through the camera that we created earlier. However, if we switch this to top view and we scroll back a little bit, we can see some interesting things here in the scene. And this may help you position your lights. So, this is the camera. And you can see as you scrub along in the timeline, the camera is moving. And it's rotating. And then, this is your 3D text that you created. And this is your light. It's trying to position the light through the perspective of the camera can be pretty tricky. Because the gizmos are pointing in strange directions relative to the camera. And so, what looks like the Z direction changes because of the angle of the camera. That can be difficult to position this. So, I'm going to trying to eyeball this. And get it in front of the words. And then. Let's look at the front view. You can see is a little bit below. I will make that a little bit bigger here. So when I bring it up. And now. When I switch back to the active camera. It should be pretty close. Yeah. That's pretty close. The looks okay. Just move this back a little bit. Maybe turn down the intensity. Pull down the radius. Actually. I'm gonna move my text up a little bit. Because it looks like it's being composited in front of the building. And that's not what I want. Alright. That's a little bit better. Now we can see some shading. And it is looking okay. Let's switch back to the top view. And I'm going to duplicate my light. And in this time I'm just gonna click and drag on the light. I'm not going to be dragging on one of the gizmo handles. So I should only be affecting the Z direction. And the X direction. And not the Y direction. If you hover your mouse over one of the gizmos. You can move this in just one direction. But. I want to move in two directions. But I didn't want to affect its height. So if I switch back here to the front view. You can see. It's still the same height. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to put a light on the other side of this. Yeah. That's looking great. When I go back to the top view. One more time. I'm gonna put another light. So I am gonna duplicate this. Hit Ctrl D. And I'm gonna move this. Behind this layer here. Take a look at that. Cool. That's looking great. Now. I am gonna hit AA. I want to change this. To more of this orange color here. Then I will change this sky. To maybe. More of this orange color right here. Maybe bring that up a little bit. That's pretty good. And I'll change this to more of this. Color here. And I'll brighten that up. This trying to dial in the look a little bit. Now, this looks like you could use maybe one more light. But this time an ambient light. So. I am gonna to new. Light. Set the ambient. Then I will color pick kind of this. Gold. Yellow. Color here. And just set this to like 10%. Just to fill in. A little bit of those details. And what you can do. To make this look a little bit better. You might. Take your lights here. And maybe color pick. Some of the sky color. And animate this over time. So. Maybe. This color here. And then. As we move along. We can change those to more of this gold color. So. It looks like it's getting a little bit of the skylight. And it looks pretty cool. One final thing. That we can do. Is we can make another composition here. With the hyperlapse video. We'll call this. Environment. And then. I'll pick something like right here. I'll go to the middle. Or maybe. Somewhere in here. Now right click on the layer. Go to time freeze frame. And then what I'll do. Is I'll pull this composition down into my project. I'll right click on this. And choose environment layer. And I want to go into my material options. On my text. I can set the reflection intensity. And I'll start to pick up some of the details. Of my environment layer. The environment layer creates. A 3D sphere. Around all the objects. And you can use that. To create reflections. You can see. I can see some of the reflections of. Like the Sasky. In here. And some of the letters. And some of the buildings in the other stuff. It's a now as I play this. It's gonna look a little bit nicer. But before I do this. One final thing that I want to enable. On my text. Under the geometry options. Is I want to set a bevel. Because before we had just a 90-degree angle. Between the front face. in the side of the text. And if I switch back to no bevel, you can see that we lose that little highlight around the edge of the text. We are just a little bit of a bevel. It's going to make the reflections pop just a little bit more. So, let's preview this. And the environment layer will slow things down pretty significantly. And it would actually make more sense to use an environment layer that was the right sides. Is something that was like a 360-degree panorama. It would be best to use one that was created in the environment. But that wouldn't really work for this shot. So instead, we are faking it just a little bit. Alright. Let's just see what a couple seconds what that looks like. Not too bad. The reflections are not great. I would probably turn down the reflections quite a lot. But just leave a little bit in there to give the sense that there are other things in the scene. This is a little bit reflective. I would also probably turn up the reflection roll off. Yes. Something like that might look pretty good. So there's definitely more to explore here with creating 3D text and 3D objects and compositing them in your scene. But this gives you a really good head start. Coming up in the next tutorial, you are going to learn about mats. So check that out. Finally, we are done for today. Don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and leave your comment down below in the comments section. Also, if you want to learn more, take a look at our first channel, Everything PS. See you next time. Bye.